we have the blessing of choice when it comes to fear now, or discernment, not choice rather, but discernment of having to look at fear and try to discern between, is it telling me that there's something to danger that I need to avoid? Or is it telling me that there's an opportunity that I should pursue? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thanks for being here. Today, I want to dig in a little bit more into fear. And specifically, I want to talk about how we know when to lean into it. Like, we feel afraid, right? You feel that sense of fear happen to you. How do you know when it's telling you that there's danger and when it's telling you that there might be opportunity? It's that opportunity, of course, that we want to lean into. When we listen to that fear and we lean into it, we want to embrace it as a signal that we can move forward. But how do we know that to make that distinction? Now, it's a pretty recent phenomenon that fear has been something that we need to listen to in order to grow. In fact, it has a couple of meanings. And throughout our human history, fear has existed for a purpose. It's been there and for a purpose and continues to exist for purpose. But we've kind of shifted that, and we've kind of maybe burned that a little bit by changing the way we look at it, especially in recent history. For hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have feared things for the right reasons. You know, I'm going to exit this cave, and the last time we exited this cave, my friend John over here was eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Now, I don't want to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, so let's avoid leaving this cave because that's scary. Fear served a purpose. Don't get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Avoid that situation. Fear was a signal for danger. It was telling us that danger exists and probably that we should avoid that danger. And as we evolved and as we got into our comfortable society where we're sitting at a desk looking at a computer or going to the grocery store to get food, we're no longer hunting. Fear started to come up in new ways. And of course, there's a lot of psychology around this. So I'm really simplifying this here because there's a lot more nuance to it. But of course, fear continued to exist for danger. You know, we enter a dark alleyway that we've never been in before. We're afraid because it's dark. We don't know who's lurking around the corner. Of course, there's a sense of being aware of danger and getting away from it. So fear still serves that purpose, but there's another purpose that it serves. When we are thinking of new things, of new ways to be creative, think about this scenario. You have a great idea that pops into your mind, or an idea that pops into your mind. You want to, you suddenly have this desire to take up swimming in the ocean, to become an open water swimmer. The only problem is you've never really swum in the ocean. It's scary because there's sharks out there, or there's the idea of rough waters. There's things like that. So it immediately scares you. So your first response is to say, no, I'm not going to do that because it's scary. So I'm going to step away from it. Or your brain tells you this story. It even goes deeper. It says, are you kidding me? Look at you. You can't do that. You've never even swam in the ocean before. Don't even worry about that. So ultimately, both cases, your brain is trying to protect you because the fear impulse is telling you, is signaling you. The only thing is it may be signaling for you for danger, but it may also be signaling you for opportunity. Now, swimming in the ocean is as open water swimmers will tell you, is pretty darn safe. You know, sharks aren't on the lookout to just attack human beings while they're swimming, even though it happens from time to time. I mean, you dress up like a sea lion and you enter their environment, it's bound to happen. But ultimately, the chances are very, very slim that that's going to happen. And if you're swimming in a group, and if you're careful and you take the right steps to learn safety protocols, it can be totally safe and enjoyable. So there, it could be a signal for opportunity if it's a desire that lifts you up. And that's the distinction we have now. We have the blessing of choice when it comes to fear now, or discernment, not choice rather, but discernment of having to look at fear and try to discern between, is it telling me that there's something to danger that I need to avoid? Or is it telling me that there's an opportunity that I should pursue? In both cases, fear is useful, and we should not fear it. We should embrace it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the greatest presidents in our history, got us through one of the most challenging times in our world history and faced it with bravery. But he got one thing wrong. And he probably got more than one thing wrong, but in this case, he got one thing wrong. He told the world, and it was one of his most famous speeches, one of the most famous quotes from that speech: the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Well, I'm going to tell this to you folks with absolute boldness, that one of the greatest presidents in our history, who got us through those challenging times, FDR, was wrong. We don't have to fear fear. And certainly, we don't have, it's not the only thing we have to fear. In fact, we should embrace it. In fact, Eleanor Roosevelt, his wife, got it right, which we should always learn to understand, that our spouses are going to disagree with us and probably say something more profound. So that's always going to happen. But Eleanor Roosevelt said that we should do something that scares us every single day. That was more spot on, because when we do that, when we embrace fear, we grow. When we embrace fear, we grow. When we lean into fear, when we do things that scare us, we grow. Now, that doesn't mean just jump into just throw some chum into the water and let the fish blood seep into the ocean and then jump in and try to attract great white sharks to get attacked. No, that's not the type of fear you want to lean into. You want to do so, with respect. But ultimately the goal is we want to look at fear not as something to be feared, but something to embrace. Now, for me, and for a lot of people out there, we spent our lives, much of our lives, fighting fear. I was a scared person. I didn't realize that fear was a superpower that existed within me, that fear actually could help me to succeed in many, many fronts. But for the first part of my life, for the first 30 years, I was a scared human being, and I used alcohol to suppress that fear. I was fighting fear, and I was losing an unwinnable war. But when I got sober, I realized, like, as I got sober, as I started to get into triathlon, as I started to excel in business and in coaching and things like that, I started to realize that the very fears that I thought were preventing me from becoming my best, or that were challenging me early in life, were actually challenging me in the right ways and saying, hey, look, this is scaring you. You should lean into it. That happened with the Ironman triathlon. And that's where the first thing of the three things I want to share with you today come into play. There are three ways that I want to share with you of how we know when to lean into fear, when we know that it's a signal, an opportunity for growth. Because the whole point of this episode is to share, how do we discern between when fear is telling us we're in danger, or fear is telling us that we have an opportunity, or is challenging us to grow. I would say more often than not, when fear shows up in our very comfortable society, first world society, for most of us, fear is presenting itself as an opportunity, not necessarily as danger. But that first moment, pardon me, that first thing I want to share with you about how to know when to lean into fear, I call it the oh shit moment. And I call it that because the second, if you've ever had an idea that hits you like a ton of bricks, this idea that like, you know, that is, you're in the shower or on a walk or something like that, and you get this idea for a new business or a new product line or an idea on some athletic venture or adventure that you want to go into. It hits you like a ton of bricks, and you think to yourself, "Oh shit!" That's like the immediate, like, instinctive reaction is, "Oh shit!" And that is your heart and your brain simultaneously saying, respectively, "Eureka!" and "Nope." So your heart is telling you, "This is amazing. I want to do this." And that is excitement that is growing in you. That "oh shit" part, that excitement part of "oh shit" is growing in you. And that's excitement. You're like, that sounds like a blast. And then your brain is saying, "Nope." That's the fear rising up to meet that excitement. And they both pop up in equal measure. And them both popping up in equal measure, the energy that produces forces out of your mouth the words, "oh shit." So when that happens, that's the signal. That is a signal that you're onto something. That "oh shit" moment is a signal that you're onto something that might be worth looking closer into, might be worth leaning into a little more. That fear there, that fear part of popping up was the signal. And the excitement part was the signal that you should maybe look in and dig in a little bit more. That "oh shit" moment happened to me both times that I thought about the Ironman triathlon. The first time it happened, I was still living in my addiction, in my alcoholism. And I didn't really know how to interpret that. And so what happened was when that "oh shit" moment happened for me, and I watched the Ironman triathlon on television, my brain verbalized the fears with lies and told me, "No, you're not good enough. You can't do that. Look at you. You're an alcoholic. You smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. Why don't you just have another beer and feel sorry for yourself?" And so it convinced me at that time to not pursue it and to go back to my unhealthy habits that were at that time comfortable. Comfort is where our brain always wants to lean into, but our heart wants to move into the realm of discomfort for growth. So the second time I saw the Ironman, or the second time I thought about the Ironman, was when I had a year of sobriety, and I knew that I wanted to make a major physical life change in my life. And I was reminded of that time I watched it on television, and the "oh shit" moment happened again. Fear and excitement popped up in me in equal measure, and I verbalized, "oh shit." And at that time, my brain again tried to verbalize the fear with lies and tell me that I wasn't good enough, that I'd never ridden a road bike before, that I barely swam in a pool. But at that time, I had this frame of reference. I had the frame of reference of sobriety, a year of sobriety, something I never thought that I could do, I had done. And I realized that leaning into that discomfort and doing it became something powerful for me, became a great point of reference and led to a more beautiful life in that moment. And I knew that if I leaned into that fear again, that thing that was both exciting me and scaring me, I knew that I could grow even more. And so I leaned into it again. So that was that first element, that first moment, that kind of like spark of, "oh shit," that tells you that you should investigate this further. Maybe lean into that fear a little more. So what's the second part? The second part of how to know when we need to lean into fear is we have to check it against our core values. Is this activity or this new venture or this thing, is it aligned with our core values? Now, what are your core values? And that's an interesting question for everybody to ponder, because we all have a set of values, things that make us angry inherently, things that make us joyful inherently, things that are the most important, or the most important priorities in our lives, the things that fill us up. What are the things you value? Now, it's important to distinguish here. These are not the values that are imposed on us, because those are not the ones that light us up, right? the values that are imposed on us are things like work hard and you'll achieve your goals. Work or it might be, those might be ingrained in us within our workplaces or our careers or certain relationships, but they might not be aligned with where our hearts are. That takes a deeper investigation. That takes a serious look at what your core values are, and it's one of the first parts of self-awareness, and one of the parts of a framework that I've developed in terms of how to identify and get really, really clear on your goals, on your dreams, and know that you can find them with conviction. Conviction is a big word for me right now. It's being convicted with those goals is to become incredibly self-aware, is to know yourself first, is to, we are already living in this body, with this brain, with this heart. But we have the opportunity to become what we truly represent from a very spiritual, from a very centered level of what our calling is, of what our purpose is, or what we're, what we feel we're designed to do. And that all comes from our core values. And it takes a lot of investigation into self-awareness to know what that looks like. How do we do that? There's a couple of ways that you can find that. You can find the values that you're drawn to, the what I would call the empowered values, the things that make you up. You can find those by first finding what makes you angry. If you know what just makes you angry in this world, does injustice make you angry? Maybe one of your core values is justice. Does lack of belief in yourself, does that make you angry? Maybe the opposite is what you value. So finding what makes you angry is a lot of times easier to find than what your core value is, because if you get to the root of what makes you angry, you get to the root of where the core value is that maybe empowers you. So find that list of core values, and then also write down the opposite. Write down what those toxic values are, what those values are that what I would call ghost values, or the things that we lean into that don't serve us. There are some things that we value in this world that don't serve us. I mean, for me, I valued alcohol for a long time because it suppressed my fear. That was one of my values. It was a ghost value because I didn't want to believe that it was a value. And that's why I call it a ghost value, is because it's something we don't truly believe exists, but it exists once we become aware of it. So one of those values for me was leaning into obsessions that would numb the pain of anxiety, fear, and other pain that might have been going on in my life. So find those core positive values that you have. Find the toxic values that you have that might be hurting you, or those ghost values that you might not know exist, but are really things that you're leaning into. If you can find that, you'll know you can run this thing that scared you and excited you, that caused that oh shit moment to happen. You could run that through the filter of your core values and make sure that it aligns. Because there are some times where things that might have that false sense of like excitement and fear might pop up in us, but it might be impulsive. And the difference between an impulsive desire and one that has conviction is if it's aligned with your core values or not. And if it causes a little bit of fear. So if it's not aligned with your core values, I mean, it might be something like, oh, I have this great idea to get 6-pack abs. That's not really aligned with my core values. That's just some kind of superficial want. I've never had 6-pack abs, by the way, no matter how hard I tried. So, but that's what we want to do. If it's missing that alignment, it's something that we won't follow into completion. It'll send us down the wrong path if it's not aligned with our core values. But if it is, it gives us greater conviction. And that's an important thing. That conviction is also reinforced by the third element of how we know when to lean into fear. That third element is it has a powerful meaning to us. The to us part is the important part, because for a professional bodybuilder, a professional bodybuilder might have a deep-rooted meaning of that is deeply ingrained in his soul or her soul, that they want to be a power lifter, that they want to be a world champion sculpted body, that is something that is beautiful and wonderful to them. It's just not to me. It doesn't have a great meaning to me, but it does to that person. So even though I don't have that meaning and that person does, that person's meaning is important to them. Just like my meaning for triathlon was important to me. So important that I was able to pursue it with conviction to the world championship. Now, triathlon might not be the meaningful thing for you. That's why it's important that when you're inspired by somebody, to not get trapped in thinking or believing without investigation that the thing that you need to pursue is the thing that they're pursuing. Yes, they're inspiring and they are somebody to model, but do you need to model them in the exact way? Maybe if it lights you up, maybe if it has a meaning for you. Now, the beauty about meaning, now, whereas core values, they're just part of you. They're who you are, and you can have aspirational values, but 80% of your values need to be just deeply ingrained. While that's the case for those, meaning is something that can be created by the story we tell ourselves. We can tell ourselves a powerful story as long as that desire that we're pursuing has a powerful meaning or is aligned with our core values. We can tell a story about it. We can make it more powerful. It goes back to the language that we put behind it and the energy that we put behind it. So what meaning are you putting behind it? I mean, Viktor Frankl, who even wrote the book on Man's Search for Meanings, lived in a concentration camp during World War II and saw the epitome of man's suffering at the hands of other people, saw the epitome of lack of control, of disgusting parts of humanity happen before him. But his discovery there was this empowered sense of meaning that the people that survived in that situation were able to develop a powerful sense of meaning behind maybe even the suffering or what was happening to them. Unfortunately, many of us don't have to deal with or live in that kind of torture or lack of control. Many of us live in environments where there are elements of our lives that we can't control or that we're not happy with, but we have the possibility to recreate meaning behind it and shift the meaning in some ways. The important thing is, when it comes to fear, is that if something is scaring us, we can find a powerful meaning behind it to make it so that we can pursue it with more conviction. If it's a business venture, if it's something, it may be that we want to make this business successful so that we can change the world or change the approach that we make an impactful life for hundreds of people that are working with us. Those are meaningful things that you can create that add to the conviction. That's how we know when we can lean into fear. So those three elements in order. Does that oh shit moment that happens, does it give you that oh shit factor moment where fear and excitement pop up in equal measure in you? Is it aligned with your core values, the values that lift you up, that fill you up? And is it rooted in a deep meaning for you? If it has those three things, that's your signal. That's your signal to embrace fear, lean into it, and pursue it with passion. Well, thank you for joining me today. Talk to you soon. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.